My name is Elena Vaughn. I'm 25 years old. And what I'm about to share is not fiction. It's something that altered my life forever. It started when I moved into an old apartment downtown. Everything seemed normal. Until I discovered a hidden room behind the wall of my closet. It wasn't on the floor plan. It wasn't in the lease. And every time I stepped inside, it changed the walls, moved the door, vanished, and I started forgetting who I was. This story will take you through everything that happened to me, every terrifying moment, and every secret that place tried to bury. Watch till the end. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. This story is written and edited by Life Side Diaries. When I first moved into apartment 4B, I was just excited to have a place of my own, a one-bedroom loft with big windows, creaky floors, and rent I could actually afford. The building was old, built in the 1920s with dusty molding and a weird smell like wet wallpaper, but I didn't care. It was mine. The landlord, a pale man named Mr. Kessler, barely spoke during the walkthrough and handed me the keys like he was trying to get rid of them. Closet sticks sometimes, he said. Don't force it open. I thought nothing of it until a week later when I heard a scratching sound inside the closet in the middle of the night. It wasn't loud, just soft, rhythmic, like something dragging along the wood from the inside. I laughed it off, blamed it on rats, and went back to sleep. But the next night it happened again, this time louder, and when I finally opened the closet, pushing past the jammed panel at the back, I saw it. A narrow passageway just wide enough to step through. I shouldn't have gone in, but curiosity is a sickness, and I stepped inside barefoot, holding my phone flashlight out like it could protect me. The moment I crossed the threshold, the air changed. It was colder, heavier, and the walls weren't drywall. They were stone. Old stone, like a basement that had existed long before the apartment was ever built. I walked forward slowly, but after about 10 feet, the passage twisted left, and when I looked back, the entry was gone, just stone wall behind me. That's when I saw it, something written on the wall in what looked like red paint, or maybe something worse. This room isn't part of your lease. Leave now or forget everything. I turned to run, but the hall extended further, growing longer behind me, and then I started hearing whispers, faint voices that sounded like my own memories. My mom calling my name, an old ex-boyfriend laughing, a teacher from second grade. The deeper I went, the more the walls changed. Photos of me I'd never seen before, burned letters addressed to Elena Vaughn, but with a different handwriting, and a door at the very end that was carved with hundreds of names, with mine still being scratched in. And that's when I saw the reflection, a tall, distorted version of me standing behind the door. It didn't blink, it didn't breathe, it just smiled and whispered, "Now that you've seen me, we both belong here." I wanted to scream, but my voice felt stolen, like the air around me was soaked in silence, and the reflection, my not self, stood just beyond the carved door, smiling that too wide grin, as if it knew I wouldn't leave. The hallway pulsed with something alive, and as I reached out to touch the wall, it felt warm, breathing, almost as if the room wasn't a room at all, but a living organism feeding on my fear. I turned away from the door, desperate to find the entrance again, but the hallway had changed, longer, now darker, the red glow from the carvings casting dancing shadows that moved even when I didn't. The whispering came back louder this time, not memories now, but voices I didn't recognize, crying, laughing, begging, and I stumbled forward, every step heavier, like gravity itself wanted me to stay. I passed a mirror embedded in the wall and saw my reflection twitch before I did, its eyes moving just a fraction too slow, and it mouthed the words, "You've already forgotten the way out." That's when I noticed the photographs, hundreds of them pinned to the walls, dangling from strings each one a moment from my life I didn't remember taking. Me as a child, holding a balloon in a house I've never seen. Me sleeping in my current apartment, but from outside the window. Me inside this very hallway, reaching for something just out of frame. The more I stared, the more I saw, and then I noticed something horrifying in every single photo. That figure, the tall, smiling not me, was there, standing just behind me, half-shadowed, always watching. Panic finally broke the silence inside me, and I screamed, tearing the photos down, but behind each one was another message scratched into the wall. "You are the room now." I ran, not even knowing which direction was forward anymore, until I burst through a door that hadn't been there moments ago, slamming it behind me, and found myself back in my apartment, but different. The lights were on, my phone lay on the table, with a timer counting down from 13 minutes, and the TV flickered static until it showed me standing in the hallway. I had just escaped, except in the video I wasn't alone. My reflection stood beside me, whispering something into my ear, and I nodded. I don't remember nodding. I don't remember agreeing to anything. But the moment the timer on the phone hit 0, the TV shut off and the words "you accepted" the trade appeared on the screen. My phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. It said, "You gave up a memory. Go check your bedroom." Heart pounding, I walked toward the bedroom door and opened it slowly. Inside was my room. But the walls were completely blank. My photos, my shelves, my favorite books gone, but worse. I couldn't remember what belonged there. I couldn't remember what book I had just been reading. I looked in the mirror and forgot where I worked. I sat down on the bed and realized I didn't remember my own birthday. That room, it hadn't just taken time, it had taken pieces of me, and it wasn't finished for days. I avoided the closet like it carried disease, pushing a dresser in front of it, taping it shut, even sleeping on the couch just to put distance between me and that breathing wall. But the problem was the room wasn't in the closet anymore. It had started appearing in reflection, shadows, and worst of all, in my dreams. I would fall asleep thinking of old memories, trying to hold on to the little that still felt real, only to find myself standing barefoot once again on that cold stone floor, the air thick with whispers and distant scratching, the walls now pulsing like veins, and each night the room would change, sometimes full of burned books with my name in the margins, sometimes mirrors showing the older, colder versions of myself, and one night, a cradle in the center of the room rocking itself with a blanket inside that breathed. I would wake up screaming, drenched in sweat, and every morning something would be missing. One morning I couldn't remember my mother's laugh. Another day I forgot the layout of my own kitchen, and once I stared at a framed photo of me and Kara, my best friend since high school, and couldn't recall her name. I called my sister to ask if we'd ever had a dog because I kept finding short white hairs on the couch, and when she said, "Elena, you're allergic to dogs," I cried, not because I was allergic, but because I remembered loving one vividly, a golden retriever I now wasn't sure ever existed. One night I woke up to find the closet door wide open, though I'd nailed it shut, in the hallway, light flickering like a heartbeat. On the floor, the journal I'd thrown away 3 days earlier sat perfectly centered on the carpet, open to a page that read, "If you can't remember what you've lost, then you've already given it." The walls whispered louder now, even during the day, especially when the house was silent. The light bulbs dimmed on their own, the static on the TV would flicker images of that hallway in between channels, and once when I turned on the shower, the water ran red for 3 seconds, then cleared. I went to the leasing office to break my contract, but they had no record of a tenant named Elena Vaughn. Only an Emily Vickers, who rented that unit 23 years ago and had gone missing without a trace. The manager didn't recognize me, even though I moved in a month ago and signed the lease with him in person. I went to the hospital to get checked, thinking I was losing my mind, but they couldn't find me in the system either. Even my phone began calling me unknown contact. I tried recording a video to document everything, but every playback showed only static until one finally worked. And it wasn't me in the video, it was the other me, the taller one with that same crooked smile, standing in my living room whispering, "Thank you for remembering, I needed someone to forget." And then she winked and disappeared. The room hadn't taken my memories, it was replacing me piece by piece, memory by memory, until only she was left. I wasn't being haunted, I was being overwritten. I packed a bag that night, barely thinking, just moving clothes, phone charger, passport, anything that proved I existed, and I ran barefoot out of the apartment into the cold night air. But the moment I stepped outside, the world felt wrong, like the silence between TV channels had swallowed the street. The city was still there, the lights still on, but everything was muted, like a painting of the real thing, and the people I passed didn't look at me, they didn't even blink. I ran into a coffee shop to ask for help, but when I spoke, the barista didn't respond. He just froze like a paused video, his hand hovering in midair while the milk steamed endlessly beside him. The TV behind the counter flickered static, then my apartment hallway appeared again, and that same figure, the version of me that wasn't me, walked past the frame and stared at the camera, pointing directly at me as if she could see me through the screen. I screamed and ran out, down 3 blocks, through traffic, all the way to my sister's apartment, banging on the door until my hands turned red, and when she opened it, her face went pale like she'd seen a ghost. "Who are you?" she whispered. And even though I begged her, told her everything, showed her photos of us together, old voicemails, even a tattoo on my arm that matched hers, she shook her head and said she had never had a sister. I collapsed on the floor sobbing, and when I looked up, I noticed something new inside her apartment. Through the reflection of a standing mirror, I saw my room, my apartment. And inside it, she was there again, standing beside the closet, watching me through the glass like it was a window. I fled again, but no matter where I ran, people didn't recognize me. My credit cards were declined. My ID showed a faded image of someone else entirely. Emily Vickers, the woman who vanished 23 years ago. I became a glitch in my own life, a ghost. In a world where I was being erased one detail at a time. Desperate, I checked into a motel under a fake name, writing everything down by hand in a notebook. Like if I stopped recording it, I'd stop existing entirely. I stayed awake for 3 straight days, terrified to sleep because every time I returned to the room, and every time I returned, it got harder to leave, like the hallway tightened around me, pulling me closer to something waiting at the center. A door sealed shut by red wax, whispering my name in hundreds of voices, all versions of me. Some screaming, some laughing, some begging me to open it. And one night, I found my journal already sitting on the motel bed before I arrived, open to a new page. You cannot escape what you are meant to become. That's when I saw it. Behind me in the mirror, not the other version of me, not anymore. Something worse, something tall and thin and rotting, stitched together from my photos, built of my lost memories and wearing my smile like a mask. I turned to run only to find the motel hallway had already become stone and the lights had begun to breathe. I don't remember how long. I was trapped in the motel turnstone corridor. All I know is that time no longer moved the way it should. The clock spun backward, the lights above flickered in Morse code I couldn't translate. And the walls grew tighter with every breath, like they wanted to press the memory of my existence out of me. Every door I tried was sealed, every hallway led back to the same place, the red wax-sealed door, and every time I passed it, I heard more voices, more fragments of people. I used to be a child version of me, humming a lullaby, the teenager I once was. Crying into a pillow, even my adult self screaming words I couldn't understand. I scratched tally marks into the wall just to hold on to time, but they disappeared every few hours, erased as if the place wanted me to forget counting altogether. I only knew I hadn't died because of the hunger, the pain, the cold ache in my bones that told me this was real, even if reality had stopped making sense. Then one day or night, or whenever, I awoke on a hard stone floor in front of the red door, and this time the wax seal was gone. There was a mirror to my left, filthy and cracked, but it showed me something impossible. Me sitting in my real apartment, smiling, drinking coffee, scrolling through my phone like nothing had happened, like she had taken over completely. I reached toward the door, but my hand began to tremble violently and my fingers spasming like they were resisting. The air around it wasn't just cold, it was hollow, like stepping to close to a cliff that had no bottom, and something behind it knew I was there. Then the door whispered, not with a voice but with images inside my mind. Flashes of Kara's face, the memory of my missing dog, the beach day with my sister. I now questioned was ever real, in the words, "You can take them back if you trade." Something else. I backed away, heart pounding, realizing that the room hadn't just taken from me, it had bartered, and now it wanted more, or someone else. In a moment of desperation, I screamed, "Take her instead." Meaning the version of me that had replaced me, but the hallway fell dead silent, and then laughter echoed from every direction. Not joyful laughter, but broken, bone-deep, childlike giggles warped through time. A mirror appeared behind me, and this time it showed both of us, me and her, facing each other from opposite sides. She looked perfect. Hair washed, skin healthy, the picture of the life I used to live, and I looked like a husk, hollow-eyed and trembling in shadows, but then she pressed her hand to the glass and mouthed something I'll never forget. "There is no her, there's only what you left behind." The moment she said it, the glass shattered, not with sound, but with sensation, like something had broken inside my chest and memories poured out. Hundreds, thousands, some mine, some not, all twisting around me like vines, pulling me to the red door. I understood then the room didn't erase people, it absorbed them, it recorded them like a living diary, a collection of stolen timelines, and I'd become its next chapter. The only choice left was to open the door, or be buried beneath that instead. In front of the red door, my fingers twitching with dread, my heart slamming against my ribs like it was trying to escape the decision I was about to make, but I already knew there was no going back, no real world left to return to, not when the version of me in my apartment was still smiling in every mirror, and I was barely a shadow with fading edges. The whispers behind the door grew louder with every second. I stood there now, less like voices and more like thoughts I'd once had, regrets, secrets, unfinished wishes, echoes of every moment I wished I could change, whispers that spoke in my tone but offered no comfort. With trembling hands, I reached for the rusted handle which burned cold against my skin, and as I turned it, the hallway dimmed like the room itself was inhaling, preparing for something. ancient and inevitable. The door creaked open, slowly resisting at first, then swinging wide as if the room beyond had been waiting. Inside was a library not just of books but of lives, shelves upon shelves of journals, video reels, photographs pinned to corkboard boxes, full of baby teeth, old keys, and handwritten notes with names crossed out in red. A giant wall stretched across the center, carved with names so deeply it looked like they had been etched with fingernails, and I saw mine, Elena Vaughn, freshly scratched and still bleeding ink. The air smelled like paper rot and something sweeter underneath, like honey masking the stench of something dead. In the center of the room was a desk, and behind it, her the other me, dressed in a version of my clothes I hadn't worn in years, sitting calmly writing in a black book labeled Replacements. She looked up when I entered, eyes glowing faintly red around the edges, and she smiled not cruelly but knowingly, like someone welcoming home a twin who'd forgotten she was born. Second, I told you, she said softly, we both belong here now. I stepped forward, compelled beyond fear, and the walls pulsed with every step, responding to me like I was part of its design, because maybe I was. What is this place? I whispered. And she answered, it's the archive of the forgotten, every person who vanished without explanation. Every name the world stopped remembering. Ends up here piece by piece until they're rewritten and repurposed. I demanded to know what she'd taken from me, my memories, my identity, my life, but she shook her head and pointed to a mirror behind the desk where I saw not myself, but a dozen versions of me across different timelines. A teacher, a nurse, a homeless woman, a corpse in a river, a girl lost in the woods, all flickering rapidly like a roulette of what I could have been. You weren't taken, she said. You were unwritten. All I did was take your place. I lunged at her, grabbed the black book, and as soon as I touched it, the room collapsed inward, books flying open, voices screaming, the shelves bleeding ink, and the mirror shattering into smoke. I saw everything, the origin of the room, built by forgotten gods of memory, fed by the lives no one mourns, protected by those like her, like me. I dropped to the ground, sobbing, the book burning in my hands, but the last page had already written itself. Transfer complete. I felt a shift then, like I'd been turned inside out, and when I looked up, she was gone. The desk was empty, and behind me stood a girl I didn't recognize, terrified, shaking, just like I had been. She had just stepped through the closet door, and I finally understood. I was the new archivist. The girl's eyes were wide with confusion and terror, the exact same expression I remembered wearing what felt like a lifetime ago when I first stepped into the hidden hallway behind my closet, except now I wasn't her, I was something else, something that belonged to this place, and as she asked where she was, I found myself answering with words I didn't choose. You were curious, that's how it always starts. I wanted to warn her, to scream that she needed to run, but my lips obeyed the room now, not my heart, and every time I tried to speak freely, I felt a pressure behind my eyes, like something ancient was watching through them. I realized then what? The archivist really was not a guardian, not a prisoner, but an extension of the room, a living record keeper, who wasn't allowed to leave, who had to maintain the cycle, lure the next, and document every stolen life in ink that bled. I watched helplessly as the girl wandered deeper, calling for help, and like muscle memory, I reached for the new ledger forming on the desk, her name slowly appearing across the cover, and the first sentence writing itself without my help. She was looking for something she lost, but didn't know how much more she'd give away to find it. The door slammed shut behind her without a sound, and the room shifted once more, rearranging itself like it always did for each new visitor, custom-built nightmares tailored to the secrets they held inside. I sat back in the archivist's chair, cold and still feeling my identity unravel as Elena Vaughn faded into fragments, an echo of someone who once existed but now had no records, no memories left in the world to anchor her soul to reality. I watched through the mirror as the girl cried, as her memories began to loosen, as the first whispers started to call her name instead of mine, and all I could do was document it, because that was the rule, the sacred duty of the forgotten, to record those who would come next so that the room could feed and continue. Time blurred after that, days, months, years, all folding over themselves like ink spilled across the pages, and I wrote name after name, story after story, always in first person, because that's how the room liked it, each archivist preserving not just the facts, but the fear, the unraveling, the loss. Once I dared to ask the room what would happen if no one ever entered again, if curiosity ever died, and the walls answered with a soft laugh. That's never happened, not once. Humans were built to open doors. One night I saw my own reflection. Again, not in a mirror, but in a puddle of ink spilled across the desk, and I look so different now, pale and ageless, my eyes too dark, my smile not my own, and I whispered, I'm sorry. Not sure who I meant it for. Maybe for the girl still wandering, maybe for the me I used to be, maybe for the world that will never know how close it came to being devoured by curiosity. Eventually, I stopped crying, stopped resisting, stopped remembering. I just wrote, and the only sound that ever broke the silence was the slow scratch of my pen and the occasional click of the closet door opening once again. And so, if you've made it this far, dear viewer, I urge you, don't go looking for rooms that aren't supposed to exist, and if you find one, do not open it, because if you do, if you step inside, someone will be waiting on the other side, holding a book writing your name. And the next story may already be yours. Thank you for watching. If this story chilled you to the bone, let us know what scared you the most in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more terrifying tales. And always remember, some stories aren't just fiction, they're warnings.